Welcome back, all my aspiring mathematicians. In the subject of algebra, there is a unit called the polynomials. And so within that unit, you are given subject topics where you are asked to factor out a quadratic expression, or it could simply be to factor out a polynomial. There are other times when you are given a quadratic equation and you are asked to solve that quadratic equation. Now, sometimes you can use the factoring technique to factor it out into two sets of binomials and then solve for x. But there are times when you cannot simply factor it out in that case. So then you will either use a quadratic formula or you can simply use completing the squares. Today I am going to show you how to use completing the square to solve a quadratic equation. So let's get right into the first example. The first example is x squared plus 8x minus 3 equals 17. Now you notice here that it is an equation because you have the equal sign, so this is not an expression. You will notice here that you have the quadratic equation in the standard form, and the standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. So this is the standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. And you will notice from this that you have a c here, but you also have a number on the right hand side of the equation sign. What you have to do, you have to first get rid of this -3 and bring it over to the other side. So that is step 1. So I'm going to do the inverse of my -3, which is +3, and whatever I do on one side, I must do it on the other side. So now I have x squared plus 8x equal 20. Step number 2 is to take our b value and we are going to divide that by 2 and then square it. So our b value here is 8. So on this side I'm going to do b divided by 2 and we are going to square it. So if I take my 8, so I'm going to do 8 divided by 2 and square that. So 8 divided by 2 is going to be 4, and then 4 to the second power is going to be 16. But I must take that 16 and I'm going to add it to both sides. You have to add it to both sides. So I'm going to rewrite what I have first. My first term here, x squared plus 8x. I'm going to leave a space. I'm going to put my 20 there. And now I'm going to take my 16 that I have over here and I am going to add it to both sides. So I have plus 16 here and plus 16 here. The third step now is that I am going to add what I have here, which is now going to be 36. And on this side, I am going to factor this out. You can factor this out the same way how you would factor any quadratic equation. And you can go back and watch my video on how to do so. So when I factor this out, I'm going to find the factors of 16 such that when added, it's going to give me the middle term, which is 8. So I must have two sets of binomials. They both must start with x. Factors of 16 such that when added is going to give you 8 is going to be 4. So this is going to be a positive 4 because you have a positive sign here and a positive sign here. Another thing that I want to show you is that when you are doing the factoring right here, you will notice that you will end up with this number, which is the 4, and that would come from when you do the b divided by 2. So when you do b divided by 2, that is the value that will always be here. So now I'm going to write it as a square because you have 2 of those occurring here. So equals to 36. So the next step that we need to do is that we need to get rid of the square. And in order to get rid of the square, we have to use our radical symbol. And when we use our radical symbol, that will get rid of the exponent 2. So I'm going to rewrite this. And I'm going to put my radical sign here to get rid of that radical sign here. And I must also put my plus or minus sign here. So now I have x plus 4 equal to plus or minus the square root of 36, which means that it's going to be plus or minus 6 because the square root of 36 is 6. So you're not finished right there. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to bring my 4 over to the other side. So because of space, I'm going to continue up here. So I'm going to have x plus 4 equal plus or minus 6. So if I bring my 4 to the other side, it's going to read as x equal negative 4 plus or minus 6. Now the next step that you need to do, you need to separate those. And so if you separate those, you will end up with x is equals to negative 4 plus 6, or x is going to equal to negative 4 minus 6. And x is going to be equal to negative 4 plus 6 is going to be 2, or x is equal to negative 10. This is your answer, and I always say that you're to box your answer or draw a cloud around your answer. As you should know by now, I always like to give you various examples because not all the time you are going to see the question straightforward as this. Sometimes you may see it in a different format, and you need to know how to tackle that type of question in order to get the correct answer. So let's get into another example that I'm going to demonstrate for you. So the next example that I'm going to demonstrate for you is x squared minus 6x equal negative 13. You notice it's different from the prior one that I gave you because the other one had a c value right beside the b term, and so this one does not have that. We have a number which is to the right of the equal sign. So that is fine. So we are going to start out with this problem. Step 1, because we have our number, which is our monomial constant over here, we don't need to move anything over. So we are simply going to just go straight to the shooter, and we are going to take our b term and we're going to divide it by 2, and we're going to raise it to the second power. So I take my b term there, which is negative 6, divide that by 2, raise it to the second power. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. To the second power is going to give you positive 9. So what I'm going to do now, I need to add it to both sides of the equation. So I'm going to rewrite the first part that I have, and I'm going to leave space, and I'm going to add my 9 to both sides of the equal sign. So that technique you have to do when you are completing square. You must add whatever value you get after you've done the b divided by 2 raised to the second power to both sides of the equation. Now the next step that we need to do, we need to add this, which is going to give me negative 4, and I also need to factor this out, so I will get 2 sets of binomials. And it is fine if you jump straight to the shooter and you notice that you will end up having the square there. That is fine. So if you're not versed on math that well, then I would suggest that you simply find the factors of 9, or as I told you, look for the b divided by 2, and b divided by 2 in this case, b divided by 2 was simply negative 3. So I'm going to put negative 3 here to complete my 2 sets of binomials. So this is what I have. Now you simply need to write it as a square, and you have negative 4. So the next step you're going to do, you are going to get rid of the exponent 2. And in order to get rid of the exponent 2, you must use the radical symbol here. And that will cancel out the exponent 2, so you will be left with x minus 3. And whatever you do on one side, you must do it on the other side, and you will end up with plus or minus. The radical symbol must be here. You must have the plus or minus sign. If you don't have that, then that will be a problem. Now, you are going to break this down. There's one thing you need to know. Because you have the square root of a negative number, you need to separate it into factors such that one is going to be the square root of -1, and then the other, whatever factor that number is. So in this case, I'm going to break this down to square root of 4 and square root of -1. Now what I must say to you is that the square root of -1 is I, and the square root of 4 is 2. And you have your plus or minus sign there. The next thing that you need to do is that you need to bring this 3 over to the other side. So you will have x equal 3 plus or minus 2i. Now you're not finished because you have a plus or minus sign here. So you need to separate this. So you will end up with x is equal to 3 plus 2i, or x is equal to 3 minus 2i. And in this case, you always write your number first and in standard form, because you need to have that 2i after your number. And this is what your answer would be. I will do a video for you that deals with the complex numbers, so that will help you to do problems that deals with numbers like this. There are going to be times when you end up with a scenario where you don't have a square root of a perfect square and the radical -1. So you need to know how to address that. And I'm going to show you an example. Say for instance, you end up with something like x is equals to plus or minus the square root of -7. All you have to do, you still have to simply break this down. So you end up with 7 and radical -1. You still note that this is going to give you I. Square root of -1 is going to give you I. This cannot be further factored out, so you still keep that. And so simply write this as x equal radical 7i, or x equal negative radical 7i. As usual, these are not the only two scenarios that I want to give you today. I want to give you a third scenario, and let's get right into the third scenario. X squared minus 10x minus 11 equals 0. We're going to do the same strategy where we're going to bring our -11 to the other side of the equal sign. So we are going to rewrite this as x squared minus 10x equal 11. Now we're not finished, because the next step is that we're going to take our b value, and the b value here is -10. So we're going to take that -10 divided by 2 and raise it to the second power. -10 divided by 2 is simply -5. -5 to the second power is simply 25. So we are going to rewrite this, and I'm going to leave space where I can add my 25. And so my 25 is going to go on either side of the equal sign. So I must do my plus 25. Now this 11 plus 25 is going to give me 36. And you can go ahead, and because I told you before, when you do completing the square, this value right here that you're going to get is going to be the one that is going to be in the set of binomials, and you're going to write it to the second power. So right off the top, we got -5 here, and that -5 is going to go there. So if you are very strong in math, you can go ahead and jump straight to this line. If you're not, you're going to go back and watch what I did on the 2 prior examples that I gave to you, where you're going to factor them out first and write them as 2 sets of binomials, and then you're going to write it as a square. Now we're not finished. So I have x minus 5 to the second power equal 36. So I always like to rewrite that, and then I am going to write my radical symbol here. And whatever I do on one side, I must do it on the other side. And I also must include my plus or minus symbol right in front of the radical sign. In actuality, what it is telling you is that the square root of 36 is not simply 6. The square root of 36 can also be negative 6. This simply means that if you have square root of 36, which we know is 6, so 6 to the second power is going to give you 36, but also you need to know that negative 6 to the second power can also give you 36. So that is the reason why you have to write the plus or minus symbol here, because these are your choices, 6 or negative 6. 6 to the second power will give you 36, and negative 6 to the second power will also give you 36. So you need to know that. So the next step here is that I now have x minus 5 equal plus or minus 6. So we are going to bring over that negative 5 to the other side. So now I have x is equals to 5, because once it crosses the equal sign, it now changed the sign, and so it is now positive. So x is plus or minus 6, and we need to separate this. Now we have x is going to be 5 plus 6, or x is going to be 5 minus 6. Now x is going to be 11, or x is going to be negative 1. And as usual, you simply box your answer or put a cloud. Now as a bonus, x equal 11 or x equal negative 1. What does that mean? That means that these are the roots of the quadratic equation, or what we call the zero, meaning that the graph crosses the x-axis at 11 and also at negative 1, meaning that there are two roots. In this case, because it is a positive value, which is an invisible 1 in front of the x to the second power, the graph is going to go facing upward. And so you will end up with a minimum value, which is at the bottom. So not only that, we can write this as a factored form, and we can say that the factored form of this is simply x minus 11 and x plus 1. That's the factored form. I'm going to cross x-axis at negative 1, and we can label this, and this is 11, so at a negative 1 and also again at 11 is going to cross the x-axis. So these are the things that you need to note, and you need to be able to pull from the answer that you're getting, and also talk about it, analyze it, and can expand on it and say something in terms of what the graph would look like. So you will end up with a minimum value because the graph is facing upward. And that's only because you have a positive number there. It is not negative. In conclusion, now that you know how to factor using completing the square, I hope that you will not be stuck on any problem, and you will be able to use the completing the square method if you cannot use the quadratic formula method, or if you cannot simply just factor out that equation. It is an easy and simple technique that you need to know, because this is also leading you to use it when you are converting a standard form equation into a vertex form of equation. And so you have to also apply parts of the completing the square method in order to change that to the vertex form of equation. So please, it's one of the topics that you don't just use it and apply it for this particular problem, but you will also use it when you are doing other math problems. I do hope that this video has helped you tremendously, and that you now know how to apply completing the squares, and you can see it from different format of examples that will be given to you, and you will have no problem tackling the problem and be successful in the answer that you get. Thank you for watching. And guess what? If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And also, don't keep this to yourself. Share this video with others so they too can be successful in math. Thanks again, and see you soon. Bye now. Cheers.